The federal courthouse showdown. The federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. had seen its share of high-profile trials, but never anything quite like this. Standing on the courthouse steps, Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida flashed his signature grin, the one that always seemed half amusement, half mockery. Cameras clicked furiously as he adjusted his tie, basking in the familiar glare of media attention. But that smirk, the one that had carried him through scandals and congressional rebukes alike, was about to vanish for good. Inside the packed courtroom, the air felt electric. "Your Honor," announced Representative Jasmine Crockett's lead attorney, his voice clear and firm, "we present Exhibits A through Z, 26 distinct pieces of evidence proving that Congressman Gaetz knowingly and maliciously defamed my client." Gasps rippled through the gallery. The judge leaned forward, adjusting his glasses as clerks wheeled forward several large binders and digital screens displaying highlighted transcripts, emails, and social media posts. "I've been on this bench for 3 decades, the judge said slowly, glancing between the towering evidence and Gaetz's visibly shaken attorneys. "But I can't recall seeing documentation this overwhelming. Congressman Gaetz, how do you plead?" The room fell silent. Every camera in the chamber zoomed in on the Florida congressman's face, just as that infamous grin melted away. For the first time in memory, Matt Gaetz looked afraid. Within hours, the hashtag #AwGaetz lawsuit disaster was trending across social media platforms worldwide. The man who had made a career out of mocking others had suddenly become the nation's punchline, the making of a political implosion. The chain of events that led to this moment had begun 3 months earlier, simmering quietly before exploding into the most talked-about defamation case in congressional history. To understand how it happened, one had to understand the two personalities at the heart of it. At 42, Matt Gaetz had built his career on provocation as performance art. He didn't merely court controversy, he fed on it. The Florida Republican's political persona was a blend of arrogance, humor, and carefully curated outrage. His trademark move, that dismissive nasal laugh he used whenever someone dared to challenge him. It was the laugh of a man who believed he was untouchable. Born into privilege, Gaetz had inherited more than wealth. He'd inherited a political dynasty. His father's influence in Florida politics paved the road for his rise, instilling in him a dangerous confidence that he could weather any storm. And for years he had. Sex scandals, ethics probes, even federal investigations had bounced off him like pebbles on armor. Online, Gaetz wielded Twitter, now X, like a weapon. His feed was a stream of sneers and insults aimed at Democrats, moderate Republicans, and especially women of color in politics. His followers adored it. His critics saw it as cyberbullying cloaked in free speech. Then came Jasmine Crockett, a freshman congresswoman from Texas who embodied everything Gaetz loved to deride. A black, progressive, and fiercely articulate representative, Crockett had spent 15 years as a civil rights attorney before entering politics. Her reputation for courtroom precision and moral clarity made her the sort of opponent Gaetz should have avoided. But arrogance has its own gravity. The spark that lit the fuse. Their clash began innocently enough. During a routine House oversight committee hearing, Crockett pressed a witness about misuse of state funds in Florida. Her questions were factual and unremarkable, but Gaetz, ever the showman, took offense. During a recess, a hot mic caught him laughing and muttering, "That woman doesn't know what she's talking about." Typical diversity hire trying to sound important. The remark might have died in the noise of daily politics if Gaetz hadn't doubled down that same evening. On a conservative podcast, he sneered, "Jasmine Crockett is what happens when you check boxes instead of qualifications. She's not in Congress because of merit, she's there because of race and gender." Then came that familiar grating laugh, broadcast live to millions. The host shifted uncomfortably, sensing trouble. But Gaetz, emboldened by the attention, went further. "Look at her resume," he continued. "A public defender? She defended criminals for a living, and now she wants to lecture us about law and order. It's laughable." The next 2 weeks saw an escalation that stunned even Washington insiders. Gaetz tweeted memes mocking Crockett's appearance. He gave interviews questioning her intelligence. He even insinuated, without a shred of evidence, that she had benefited from lowered testing standards. Each insult was accompanied by that trademark smirk. What he didn't realize was that Crockett's team was quietly building a case. Her chief of staff, a former prosecutor, began cataloging every statement, tweet, and interview. Screenshots were time-stamped, audio clips transcribed, video archives downloaded and stored. Piece by piece, a mountain of evidence grew, one that would soon bury Gaetz's arrogance under the weight of his own words. The calm before the storm at first. Crockett refused to engage. Congressman Gaetz's remarks say more about him than they do about me, she told reporters calmly. My focus is on serving the people of Texas, not trading insults. Gaetz mistook her restraint for weakness. He took to Fox News, his grin wide, his tone dripping with condescension. Jasmine Crockett won't debate me on the issues because she knows she's out of her depth, he said. She's a walking example of why affirmative action has failed. People getting jobs they didn't earn. That was the final straw. Crockett called her former law partners and quietly assembled a legal dream team. Their mission was simple: expose Gaetz's lies and hold him accountable. The lawsuit that shook Washington. 6 weeks later, Crockett's attorneys filed a federal defamation lawsuit that would shake Washington to its core. It dropped on a Tuesday morning with surgical precision. Every major news outlet had been tipped off in advance, ensuring instant coverage. The 127-page filing was devastating, meticulously sourced, exhaustively documented, and legally airtight. It didn't just accuse Gaetz of defamation, it proved it. Where he had mocked her as a diversity hire, the suit presented Crockett's academic records, graduating summa cum laude from Howard University and earning her law degree with honors from the University of Houston. Where he had belittled her legal career, it listed her victories in federal civil rights cases, including several against major corporations and state agencies. The exhibits were brutal: screenshots of Gaetz's tweets, transcripts of his interviews, even internal communications from his office showing he had intentionally targeted Crockett to undermine her credibility. The moment of impact, when the news broke, Gaetz was mid-interview on Fox News. The anchor paused, touching her earpiece, then interrupted him live. Congressman Gaetz, we're getting reports that Representative Jasmine Crockett has just filed a major defamation lawsuit against you. Do you have a comment? The congressman froze. His mouth opened, then closed again. For once there was no smirk, no laugh, just confusion. I haven't seen any lawsuit, he stammered. This is obviously a political stunt. But the host wasn't finished. The suit seeks $20 million in damages and includes extensive documentation of your statements. Would you like to respond? A flicker of panic crossed his face. This is ridiculous. Everything I've said about her is political. Opinion, protected speech. But even as he spoke, his voice betrayed uncertainty. Moments later, he cut the segment short, citing urgent legal matters. The fallout by evening, the story dominated every major network. Legal analysts dissected the lawsuit in real time. A Harvard law professor appearing on CNN summed it up bluntly. This isn't just a defamation suit, it's a blueprint for how to hold powerful people accountable. Crockett's team has documented everything. She's proven malice, falsity, and intent. That's a trifecta rarely achieved in public figure cases. The next morning, Gaetz tried to reclaim control with a press conference outside the Capitol. Surrounded by a few loyal allies, he forced a nervous chuckle that came out hollow. This lawsuit is absurd, he declared. Jasmine Crockett can't handle political criticism, so she's trying to weaponize the courts. This is lawfare by the radical left, but the press wasn't buying it. Congressman, a reporter called out, the lawsuit includes a text message in which you allegedly wrote, "I'm going to destroy that woman's reputation." How is that political criticism? Gaetz's grin faltered. I don't recall any such text. It's from your personal phone number, the reporter pressed. Are you suggesting it was fabricated? For the first time in his career, Matt Gaetz had no answer, and that silence was louder than any laugh he'd ever given. The press conference devolved into chaos, as reporters pressed Gaetz with specific questions about evidence in the lawsuit. Each question chipped away at his composure. By the end, he was visibly sweating, his answers becoming increasingly incoherent. Meanwhile, Crockett held her own press conference, but hers was markedly different. She stood calmly at the podium, her legal team behind her, and delivered a statement that was measured but powerful. For months, Congressman Gaetz has engaged in a campaign of deliberate defamation against me, she said. He has questioned my qualifications, my intelligence, and my right to serve in Congress, not based on my policies or my votes, but based on my race and gender. This isn't political discourse. This is targeted harassment, and it ends now. She took questions with the composure of the seasoned attorney she was. When asked why she chose to sue, her answer was simple: because nobody should have to endure what Congressman Gaetz has put me through. If I don't stand up to this, he'll do it to someone else. Bullies only understand one thing: consequences. The legal proceedings moved quickly. Gaetz's attorneys filed a motion to dismiss, arguing that his statements were protected political speech. But at the hearing, things went disastrously wrong for Gaetz. The judge, a conservative appointee, was clearly unimpressed with Gaetz's defense. "Counselor," he said to Gaetz's attorney, "your client didn't just criticize Representative Crockett's policies. He made specific factual claims about her qualifications and abilities. He said she only passed the bar because of flowered standards. That's not an opinion. That's a factual claim, and it's demonstrably false." Gaetz's attorney tried to argue that it was hyperbole, but the judge cut him off. "Hyperbole? Your client went on 17 different programs and made the same claims. He tweeted about it 43 times. This wasn't an offhand comment. This was a sustained campaign." Then came the moment that would haunt Gaetz forever. Crockett's attorney stood up and said, "Your Honor, we'd like to present a recording we've recently obtained." The courtroom went silent as the audio played. It was Gaetz at a private fundraiser, his voice clear and unmistakable. "Crockett thinks she's smart because she's got degrees. But we'll know those degrees don't mean anything when they're basically handed out to meet quotas. I'm going to keep hitting her until she either quits or breaks down. It's actually fun watching her try to maintain that professional facade when you know she's seething inside." The recording ended with Gaetz's law, that same dismissive superior loft that had become his trademark. But in the silent courtroom, it sounded different. It sounded cruel. It sounded damning. The judge's expression was stern. "Mr. Gaetz, is that your voice on the recording?" Gaetz, who had been forced to attend the hearing, stood up slowly. His face was pale, his usual confidence completely gone. "Your Honor, I would need to verify the authenticity. It's a simple question, Congressman. Is that your voice?" The pause that followed felt eternal. Finally, Gaetz said quietly, "It sounds like me, but the context seems quite clear." The judge interrupted. "You stated an intent to harass Representative Crockett until she quits or breaks down. Is that correct?" Gaetz's attorney tried to object, but the damage was done. The judge denied the motion to dismiss, saying, "Not only does this case have merit, but based on the evidence presented, it appears Representative Crockett has an exceptionally strong claim. This case will proceed to trial." The trial date was set for 6 weeks later, but Matt Gaetz's world began collapsing long before then. The recording from the fundraiser had been leaked to the media, and it played on every news network hourly. The man who had laughed at others was now the one being laughed at. Republican leadership, who had long tolerated Gaetz's antics, began distancing themselves. Speaker Johnson released a carefully worded statement, saying he was concerned by the allegations and that all members should conduct themselves with dignity and respect. Behind closed doors, the message was blunter. According to sources, McCarthy told Gaetz, "You're on your own with this one. You picked this fight, and now you're going to lose it spectacularly." Gaetz tried to maintain his bravado on social media, but his tweets became increasingly desperate. "This is a witch hunt orchestrated by the radical left," he posted. "Jasmine Crockett and her liberal lawyers are trying to silence me." But the responses were brutal, even from conservatives. "Dude, you literally said you wanted to break her. That's not a witch hunt. That's consequences," read one popular reply. As the trial approached, more damaging information emerged. 3 of Gaetz's former staffers agreed to testify for Crockett, providing evidence of what they called a pattern of targeted harassment against female colleagues. One former aide revealed that Gaetz kept a list of female Democrats he wanted to take down a peg. Gaetz's legal team tried desperately to negotiate a settlement. They offered $500,000, then $1 million, then $5 million. But Crockett refused every offer. Her lawyer told the media, "This isn't about money. This is about accountability Congressman Gaetz needs to face, the consequences of his actions in open court." The trial began on a Monday morning in federal court. The courthouse was packed with media, politicians, and curious citizens who had lined up since dawn to get a seat. Matt Gaetz arrived trying to project confidence, but his smile looked forced, his laugh nowhere to be heard. Crockett arrived looking composed and professional, her legal team carrying boxes of evidence. She nodded politely to Gaetz, who quickly looked away. The opening statement set the tone. Crockett's attorney laid out the case methodically. We will show that Congressman Gaetz engaged in a deliberate, malicious campaign to destroy my client's reputation based not on her policies or actions, but on hers and gender. We will present evidence of his own words, his own texts, his own emails, proving beyond any doubt that this was defamation with malicious intent. Gaetz's attorney tried to frame it as political discourse. Congressman Gaetz is a passionate advocate for his beliefs. Sometimes that passion leads to strong words, but that's the nature of politics. This lawsuit is an attempt to chill free speech and political debate, but from the first witness, it was clear Gaetz was in trouble. Crockett's team had done their homework. They presented a timeline of Gaetz's escalating attacks, showing how they went from political criticism to personal attacks to outright lies about her qualifications. The most damaging testimony came from a former Gaetz staffer named Jennifer Martinez. She testified that Gaetz had specifically instructed his team to find dirt on Crockett, and when they couldn't find any said, "Then we'll create our own narrative. Say she's an affirmative action case. The base will eat it up. Did you express concerns about this?" Crockett's attorney asked. "Yes," Martinez replied. "I told him it was wrong and potentially legally problematic. Halad and said she'll never sue. These people never do. They're too worried about looking angry or aggressive." The courtroom was silent except for the sound of reporters typing furiously. When Gaetz himself took the stand, it was a disaster. Under cross-examination, he was forced to admit that he had never actually researched Crockett's qualifications before attacking them. He couldn't explain why he had claimed she only passed the bar due to lowered standards when she had actually scored in the top 1%. Congressman Gaetz, Crockett's attorney, pressed, "You said Representative Crockett was a diversity hire. What evidence did you have for this claim?" Gaetz shifted uncomfortably. "It was my opinion based on what, Congressman? Her race, her gender. What exactly made you think she hadn't earned her position?" It was a general observation about a general observation. You made specific claims about her qualifications. Were those claims based on any actual evidence?" Gaetz's attorney objected repeatedly, but the judge overruled most of them. Gaetz was forced to admit under oath that he had no evidence for his claims about Crockett's qualifications, abilities, or how she'd gotten her position. The knockout blow came when Crockett's team played a compilation video of Gaetz's appearances on various shows, each one showing him laughing as he made false claims about her. The repetition was damning the Somalis, the same dismissive laugh over and over again. "Congressman," the attorney asked, "in this video you're laughing as you defame my client. Do you find ruining someone's reputation funny?" For once, Matt Gaetz had no response. No laugh, no smirk, just silence. When Crockett herself testified, she was calm, dignified, and devastating. She spoke about the impact of Gaetz's attacks, the death threats she received, the racist messages, the constant questioning of her qualifications despite her exemplary record. "Congressman Gaetz didn't just attack my policies or my votes," she said, looking directly at him. "He attacked my very right to be in Congress. He suggested it was there not because of my work, my education, or my abilities, but because of my race and gender. That's not political discourse. That's bigotry," she continued. His laughter while spreading these lies showed how much he enjoyed it. He took pleasure in trying to tear him down. "But I'm still standing, and I'm here to ensure he faces consequences for his actions." The jury deliberated for just 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and delivered the verdict. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Representative Jasmine Crockett, on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed to file their stories. Crockett's team embraced, and Matt Gaetz sat frozen, his face pale, finally understanding that his actions had consequences. But the verdict was just the beginning. The jury still had to decide on damages, and when that number came, it was staggering. $15 million in compensatory damages and $10 million in punitive damages. $25 million total. The judge in his final statement was scathing. "Congressman Gaetz, you used your platform and power to deliberately spread lies about a colleague based on nothing more than prejudice. Your lauder, while doing so, showed a callous disregard for the truth and for Representative Crockett's reputation. This verdict should serve as a warning to all public officials. Defamation has consequences, regardless of your position." The image of Matt Gaetz leaving the courthouse became one of the most iconic political photographs of the year. Gone was the trademark smirk, the dismissive laugh, the cocky swagger. In its place was a man who looked broken, defeated, and for the first time in his political career, genuinely afraid. The $25 million judgment was more than Gaetz's entire net worth. Financial disclosure forms showed he had maybe $2 million in assets. His lawyer told reporters they would appeal, but legal experts were unanimous. The evidence was so overwhelming that an appeal was unlikely to succeed. Within hours of the verdict, the political consequences began. The House Ethics Committee announced they were opening an investigation into Gaetz's conduct. Republican leadership made it clear he would be removed from all committee assignments pending the investigation. Florida Republicans began distancing themselves immediately. The state party chair released a statement saying, "Gaetz's behavior does not reflect Florida Republican values." There were already whispers about primary challengers lining up for his seat. On social media, Gaetz gets gay-stranded for days. The man who had built his brand on owning the libs had been thoroughly owned himself. Memes of his shocked face in court spread across every platform. His trademark laugh became a punchline. Audio clips of it were mixed into songs mocking his downfall. Conservative media, which had often provided Gaetz a friendly platform, largely abandoned him. Tucker Carlson, who had frequently hosted Gaetz, didn't mention the verdict. Newsmax covered it briefly, then moved on. Even O, typically reliable for supporting embattled conservatives, kept their distance. For Jasmine Crockett, the victory was transformative. She had already been a rising star, but defeating Gaetz in such spectacular fashion elevated her to a new level. She was invited to speak at the Democratic National Convention. Book publishers offered her 7-figure deals for her memoir. Time magazine put her on their cover with the headline, "Standing Up to Bullies." But Crockett handled her victory with the same grace she'd shown throughout the ordeal. In her first interview after the verdict, she said, "This wasn't about destroying Matt Gaetz. This was about standing up for everyone who's been bullied, harassed, or defamed by someone in power who thought they were untouchable." She announced that she would donate a significant portion of the settlement to organizations that provide legal aid to victims of defamation and harassment. "Nobody should have to go through what I went through," she said, "and nobody should be unable to fight back just because they can't afford lawyers." The legal implications of the case were significant. Law schools immediately began teaching Crockett vs. Gaetz as a landmark defamation case. The thoroughness of Crockett's evidence collection became atom plate for future cases. Legal scholars wrote papers about how she had successfully proven actual malice, the hardest element in public figure defamation cases. 3 months after the verdict, Gaetz's situation worsened. Unable to pay the judgment, he was forced to declare bankruptcy. His financial records made public through the bankruptcy proceedings revealed he'd been living far beyond his means, financing his lifestyle through questionable loans and credit arrangements. The Ethics Committee's investigation found him guilty of conduct unbecoming a member of Congress. While they couldn't force him to resign, their report was so damaging that his political career was effectively over. Republican donors abandoned him. His speaking engagements dried up. Even the fringe media outlets that had once embraced him wanted nothing to do with him. 6 months after the verdict, facing a certain primary defeat and possible criminal charges for perjury based on his trial testimony, Matt Gaetz announced he would not seek re-election. His resignation statement was bitter and defensive, blaming the woke mob and judicial activism for his downfall. But nobody was listening anymore. The man who had laughed at others had become a cautionary tale. In his final speech on the House floor, Gaetz tried to salvage some dignity, but the chamber was nearly empty. Most members had deliberately stayed away, not wanting to be associated with him. As he spoke about his legacy of fighting for conservative values, the few members present looked at their phones or shuffled papers, ignoring him completely. The contrast with Crockett couldn't have been starker. She had become one of the most respected members of Congress, known for her preparation, her dignity, and her effectiveness. When she spoke on the House floor, members from both parties listened. She had committee assignments that usually took decades to achieve. There was serious talk about her running for Senate or even higher office. A year after the trial, a documentary about the case premiered at Sundance. It featured interviews with jurors who explained their decision. The evidence was overwhelming. One said, "But what really convinced us was that laugh. Every time we heard him laughing while lying about her, it showed us exactly who he was. A bully who thought he could destroy someone for fun." Another juror added, "Miss Crockett showed us what courage looks like. She stood up to someone who thought he was untouchable and proved that nobody is above accountability." The documentary included footage of Gaetz from before the trial, laughing, mocking, dismissive, contrasted with footage from after, silent, defeated, alone. The title of the documentary said it all, The Last Laugh. How Jasmine Crockett brought down Matt Gaetz. Gaetz tried to rehabilitate his image with a podcast and social media presence, but it failed spectacularly. His subscriber numbers were embarrassingly low. His attempts to return to his old provocative style fell flat. Nobody wanted to hear from a disgraced former congressman who had lost everything because he couldn't stop bullying a colleague. Meanwhile, Crockett's influence continued to grow. She authored landmark legislation on workplace harassment. She became a mentor to young women entering politics. When she spoke at universities, auditoriums were packed with students wanting to hear from the woman who had stood up to a bully and won. In her autobiography, published 2 years after the trial, Crockett reflected on the experience. Matt Gaetz thought my race and gender made me an easy target. He lauded at the idea that I could fight back. But I had something he didn't count on: the truth, the law, and the determination to use both. His laughter was his downfall because it revealed who he really was, someone who took joy in trying to destroy others. In the end, had destroyed himself. The book became a bestseller, while Gaetz's competing memoir sold fewer than 5,000 copies and was remanded within months. 5 years later, when Crockett was sworn in as a United States Senator, Matt Gaetz was working as a low-level consultant for Asmal, Florida real estate firm. His political career, a distant memory, his trademark laugh silenced forever. The case became required reading in political science and law courses across the country. It was cited in numerous subsequent defamation cases. Most importantly, it changed the culture in Congress. Politicians became more careful about personal attacks, knowing that the precedent of Crockett versus Gaetz meant they could face serious consequences for defamation. The phrase "pulling a Gaetz" entered the political lexicon, meaning to destroy your own career through arrogance and bullying. Campaign managers warned their candidates, "Don't pull a Gaetz," meaning, don't let your ego lead you into legal trouble you can't escape. If this story of justice served left you satisfied, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible political showdowns. Hit that notification bell to catch every moment when bullies in politics finally face consequences. What did you think of Crockett's legal strategy? Should more politicians face lawsuits for defamation? Share your thoughts in the comments below.